welcome to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament Preview Show. I'm your host, Beth Poole. I'm joined by weekend sports anchor Alex Egan, Bison play-by-play announcer Brian Shawn, and former Bison coach Irv Iniger. Thank you guys so much for being here. We are going to have a lot to talk about in this hour-long special, breaking down the season a little bit, hearing about some of the guys, and of course getting both of your guys' opinions on these guys. We want to first start with talking about about the NCAA tournament, of course. Let's begin with the Selection Sunday show. The Bison, for the second year in a row, got to watch their name be called for the big dance.
Who do they play? Out of the Summit League, the 15th seed Bison of North Dakota State. In the league tournament final, North Dakota State held on for a 1-point win. They are 23-9 on the year. So it'll be Gonzaga against North Dakota State.
So we know that the Bison will be playing Gonzaga in this one. Of course, Gonzaga, the Bulldogs are have just two losses this season. They lost, of course, early to Arizona, and then, of course, again in their regular season finale to BYU. A tough game for them in that one, but it seems that one maybe sparked them a little bit as they headed for that tournament, and they, of course, dominated in the WWC tournament, earning that second seed.
Yeah, they did play very well this season, and of course, the late loss there at the end of the year really kind of sparked them to getting that 2 seed, but they certainly are a top 5 team in the nation. So a 2 seed is going to be very well deserved, and that's a very, very tough team that they are getting ready to play.
Actually, I think they could have been a number 1 seed. I mean, there were so many good things that happened in that last weekend that probably pushed them out. But they were good enough. They're so big and they're so strong and they shoot so well. So it's going to be a heck of a battle for the Bison.
Yeah, Gonzaga is, they can do it in so many different ways. They shoot at 41% from three-point range. They're the number 1 team in the country shooting from the field, and they got really good skilled bigs too. And they get them from Europe and some other places, so you know they can step out and hit some of those short jumpers and everything. They're a tough matchup for North Dakota State, and they're going to be a tough matchup for anybody. This may be the best team that Mark Few has had since he's been at Gonzaga in his 17th year.
There's no question about that. I think that they're so well coached. I think he's been there 17 years. They've won 14 out of the last 15 conference championships. He's been in the NCAA 17 times. He knows what it takes.
Well, and the Bison have had a little bit of success against some of these bigger dogs this year. Now, granted, it was early and they were losses in Texas, Iowa, and those kind of games, but they were able to kind of get their sea legs under them. And something that the guys said this week when we asked them about how those games have benefited them, Lawrence Alexander said his teammates never shied away from them. They rose to those occasions, and they didn't rattle them, which was really important.
Yeah, I think it is. And Beth, you bring up a good point, those early games. Let's get you to the pro seed road to Seattle. The season begins with consecutive losses to 2 tournament teams in Texas and Iowa. As you said, Beth, the Bison then come home to a new home, Shields Arena, to play Kennesaw State, earning their first win of the year. And it would also spark a 4-game winning streak before back-to-back losses at Southern Miss and Montana. The Bison would end their non-conference 8-5 before heading into the conference schedule. Any games that stood out to you guys in that non-conference schedule for them?
Well, I go back to, I'm really proud of what they tried to do off the bat. They take their team down to Texas, they go to Iowa, and you know that those are going to be extremely tough games, especially with a team that's lost everybody, except Alexander, really. And, probably the best competition these guys had this year was playing against them all last year. If you really go back and look at it.
It's funny you say that. Talking to A.J. Jacobson, he said playing against Marshall Bjorkum, playing against Taylor Braun, Trayvon Wright, they knew if they didn't bring their top game at practice, that they weren't gonna. They were just gonna get laughed off the court, and you couldn't show up and not play your best at practice. So what more could you expect out of them this year?
No, I agree. I think I think the non-conference season, and we go back to the Crookston game. That was a pivotal game for them. I mean, you kind of look at it any way you want, you win it. And that's what I've told people over and over again. They say, well, we won by 1 point. I said, you know what? Next year, they're not going to care. And I said, winning is the key. And I said, we forget how hard it is to win. We really do. And as a former coach, I can tell you, I never appreciated the wins enough. It was one of my biggest sins.
Well, we'll talk plenty more about the Bison winning in this one. Still to come on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament Preview Show, we sit down with key pieces of the Bison squad. We continue to break down the pro seed road to Seattle, and we have an exclusive discussion with former Bison head coaches Saul Phillips and Tim Miles you won't want to miss. Stick with us. Welcome back to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament Preview Show. The Bison were picked to finish 5th this season in the Summit League, a team returning just one starter from their Summit League Tournament Championship roster and taking on a first-year head coach. They go into this the 5th seed in that preseason poll. Is that a fair assessment? I mean, they weren't being undercut, were they?
You know, I don't think so. I kind of think that may be a spot when you look back at what they had coming back that would have made sense for them. But I don't know if you could have necessarily projected the way Carlin Dupree or A.J. Jacobson, how the coaches or media would have seen that, just because they haven't played a lot of minutes. Dexter Werner coming out of nowhere. And I don't know if we could have seen Lawrence Alexander taking over and becoming the absolute stud he was, and the way he was able to take over games late and will his team to win. And, you know, when you're having a guy that's averaging 20 points a game, pretty special.
It really is. And I felt they might have been lower. You know, I mean, I thought the conference gave them a compliment by doing that. When you lose all the players that they've lost, you have hardly any points coming back. And even if you go back and look at Alexander's point totals, I mean...
Well, they didn't need him.
No, he was a role player, and he did it so well. I mean, he gave up, he sacrificed a lot. And that's why that team won, because they all sacrificed. And he comes back, and he takes his role, he takes it and charges on it. He takes these young people under his belt, and he is an unbelievable leader. And he did what he had to do even this year. Point totals are great, but I think people are so missing the boat on all the other things. The block shot the other night. I mean, you can go a whole host of things.
And to stay in bounds on that block shot. That's what I kept watching over and over today. Well,
and Dave Richmond had said, you know, there really isn't, I remember back in October talking to him about this, there really isn't a dominant team in the Summit League. You know, you could always point to North Dakota State, South Dakota State, because they had Walters and Taylor Braun the last few years, but even though IPFW was picked to finish first and Denver second, who finished 4th and 7th respectively in the league, I don't think you could have looked at that and said, these two teams are the surefire ones to hit. And even in the tournament last week when we went down to Sioux Falls, I think coaches are telling you any one of the top 6 or 7 teams have a chance to win this thing. It was still that balanced.
All right, well, we continue to look at our Proceed Road to Seattle. The Bison kicked off Summit League play and 2015 with a win over Oral Roberts here in Fargo. In fact, the Bison would win their first 3 conference games before a loss to South Dakota on the road.
Any one of those particular games, I mean, I know there was, you know, AJ didn't play very well in any of that. Paul Miller, a freshman, starting to kind of find his own, and I think he started dealing even with illness and injuries right away. Yeah,
really, I think getting that first win over Oral Roberts was huge. You know, you have to get those conference home wins when you can, and when you start off against Oral Roberts and South Dakota State, 2 teams that were picking right in front of you, a lot of the media and a lot of the coaches, for them to get those 2 wins at home early were so critical, and they were both really tight games. And Irv, I think we had talked about how winning close games early in the conference can start to build that winning culture with some of the young kids, and I think it worked out.
It really did, and I think Oral Roberts scared me because they've got such a great reputation, and Sutton's done a great job there for years and years, and then you got South Dakota State coming in here. But I think, you know, you can look at this, and we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, somewhere along the line, but not losing at home. And you've got to win those games. And I almost felt like if they went 1-1, it was going to be great. I mean, I really did. As a coach, I thought, with as powerful as those teams coming in, I thought this is going to be a tough road here.
Well, and certainly one part we wanted to focus on as well was, well, he may not have always been leading the charge for the Bison. Dexter Werner saw time in all 32 games this season, coming off the bench in 29 of them. The sophomore forward from Bismarck is just one of the key pieces of this Bison squad. NDSU sophomore Dexter Werner sealed his fate to be a Bison when he exploded on the summer scene his senior year of high school, and he hasn't stopped since.
Nobody that believed in themselves more than Dexter, and he wanted it. And I think, you know, the fact that he's a North Dakota kid, you know, is put on the green and gold was a special part of it.
Werner plays with that pride every night, bringing what his teammates unanimously refer to as a spark.
He brings a ton of energy, crashing in the offensive glass.
So whenever we need a run or we just need a spark, Dexter come off the bench and give it to us.
He leads the team with over 170 rebounds, playing only about half the minutes. Coach Richmond says the biggest challenge for Dex was to create success on both ends of the floor. Dexter leads all Bison with 68 offensive boards this season, ranking him 5th in the Summit League.
After I started getting comfortable, you know, I just started to just play how I play, and it really just started to come out easier after I had a few games under my belt.
Being recognized as the Summit League's 6th Man of the Year was no fluke. When Dexter Werner is on the floor, he is consistently contributing.
You know, there's no category that you put Dexter into. He's not a stretch 4. He's not a back to the basket 5. He's unique. He really is. But I think that uniqueness is part of his effectiveness.
Right now with a young team, can you maintain?
Well, still to come on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament Preview Show, Saul Phillips and Tim Miles talk about their former program. But next, Brian Shawn sits down to talk with Bison head coach Dave Richman on a subject the coach doesn't like to talk much about, Dave Richman himself. Don't go away.
Make no mistake, Brian, I'm very excited and I'm very appreciative of everything. But this isn't and will never be about Dave Richman. And there's a lot of work that goes. I mean, you're fortunate. You see us behind the scenes a lot. There's a lot of work that goes into this by a lot of people. There's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time away from families, a lot of, you know, the way the Summit League travel is. And that's what I'm very appreciative of is, you know, the time and effort, the blood, sweat, and tears by our guys. Sometimes a coach takes the brunt of it when they lose, and I'm very cool with that. And a lot of times we get too much credit when we win. And that credit needs to be deflected to a lot of people.
You didn't really have a home court. I think you're now practicing in your third different place now of the year because you've had to take your floor out of your practice facility over the last week and everything. Do you guys ever talk about that? Do you ever look back at that and think it's even more impressive because we have not had a home floor, a home gym, a practice facility that's really been ours throughout the year?
5. That's what I'm at. So many practice courts we've been on in the Twin Town areas. You know, Shields, Moorhead was able to let us over there. We were appreciative of that. We have our practice facility. We've been in the wellness center yesterday in the bunker too. But that was a big concern and a worry of myself and our staff of how we're going to handle that. But in a weird way, it's really brought us closer together. There aren't any excuses, and again, that's so much of a credit to Lawrence. I mean, maybe it is because these guys don't know any better, that they just go out there and this is what it is, and we're excited to be in our warehouse, you know, and we're excited to lift in the grocery store with the, you know, the produce and fresh meat sign still up there, you know, and that's again. The culture of togetherness, the culture of toughness, you know, that really starts, you know, again with our senior leadership, but with also within, you know, the administration.
You can see the entire interview with Brian and Coach Richman on our website, valleynewslive.com. Plenty more in that interview. As a coach, Irv, I have to ask you, what do you see in Dave Richman, and what are you impressed with about him?
I'm really impressed with Dave Richman. He's been around some great coaches. He's learned from these coaches. He's taken the best from each of these coaches, and he's put it within his own philosophy. I've been around like the Tim Miles. I've been around the Saul Phillips, McDermott. I can go right now. Oh, Ben Jacobson was here as well. Mm-hmm. And if you look at him, he's as good as any of them. I don't try to single out who's better, but I tell you what, I'd take him and put him on my team any time. I have great respect for him and what he's done. And, you know, you did a great interview, but you know what? A lot of coaches would have complained all the problems they had this year. And you know what? He didn't complain. He made it work. And I'm telling you, to be undefeated at home, we have no idea how much he's put into this and what he's done. And he'll give credit to his coaches and his players. But he's as good. We're very fortunate to have him.
Your biggest takeaway, I mean, from...
You know, what I like, I get to be around them a lot, and I go through some of their film sessions, and they come off this tiny little, where they have about 2 feet between the out of bounds and the wall, and that's literally all they have. And then they go into this little tiny makeshift locker room, and they have a tiny projector set up that's shining on a white wall, and they all sit on the ground, and that's how they watch film. And then they go to their little lockers, and they have the taped up Summit League standings on the wall over there. I mean, it's amazing how they've made it feel like home, but at the same time, you see what they're dealing with, and you're like, how is this? It's unbelievable to me how they're able to just shoo all that off and shake it off and play.
It starts at the top.
It does.
And you know what? They take away. He walks down there. He's a role model, and guess what? They follow.
And Irv, you said something that I thought was really good. You know, how many teams that made the tournament that had to deal with 5 different practice facilities? It's really unheard of, especially at the Division I level.
I think this should be a story. Honestly, this is the greatest story in the NCAA as far as I'm concerned. You're going to have all these other stories, but this is a tremendous story. And then look what we've done. And we're undefeated at home. I mean, and where is home? So it's really kind of neat what he's done and how he's made it work with his coaches and his players. And the players, I mean, I think the world of this guy.
All right. Well, we continue now with the Proceed Road to Seattle. For the Bison, picking things up in late January, the Bison turned a 3-1 record into an 8-2 jump on the conference. Some big wins there over some teams that were picked, again, ahead of NDSU in the preseason rankings.
And this is a part where we really start to see A.J. Jacobson come into his own. He started to find his stride during this stretch, and it was really interesting to see. He started just 1 for 19 and then was able to fight his way back. We take a listen to some of the things his teammates had to say.
The mental makeup for a redshirt freshman to do that, to withstand everything and still towards the end play your best basketball is pretty remarkable. That could have gone a lot of ways. The 1 for 19, missing 5-6 games with the injury, but he's withstood it all. He's a tremendous talent. His ball handling has gotten a lot better. His play, his decisions at the second level has gotten a lot better. And there's a reason why. AJ wants to be good. AJ wants to be really, really good. And he works at it every single day. And that's why he's reaping those benefits. And, part of a big reason why we're in the NCAA tournament.
Just knowing that he redshirted last year, he didn't play as much. And to see that he struggled in the beginning, but he didn't keep his head down. He kept working and being in the gym. Just to see that success going on through the year has definitely helped us as a team.
Just to see him play the way he is now, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, me and him, as the younger guys on the team, we're always pushing each other, and I look forward to playing with him for the next couple of years.
Well, we are just about halfway through our Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament preview show. Still to come, we ask Saul Phillips and Tim Miles to share the spotlight, a moment you won't want to miss.
I think with LA, you start with his humility and his hunger to get better. And throughout the last 3 years, I mean, he just did what we needed to do to win. And again, that epitomizes who LA is.
His senior year, his role has changed drastically. It wasn't until a month into the season, in a 69-57 loss to Montana, that Lawrence Alexander says it clicked.
I think I was the only person on my team that was in double figures that game. We kind of struggled, but I think that was the game that kind of got me going and got me ready for this role that I had to take this year.
Scoring has come easy for the senior, but this year he's been challenged to lead in new ways.
We had a bunch of other vocal leaders last year, and he could just be the guy that always showed up every day and competed and played hard and did his job. But this year I've seen a much more vocal Lawrence Alexander.
Even in this last game against South Dakota State, that was the first time at halftime where he was just on us. I mean, you could tell he didn't want to lose that game.
Clutch in game, a fighter in life and on the court, Lawrence Alexander has cemented his name in the NDSU record books. But most beneficial for his Bison is how he's affected his teammates' careers to come.
There's a confidence and there's a swagger about Lawrence's presence, and I think a lot of our guys, you can just feel that, sense it. They want to be a part of that.
He never dwells on the past. He never dwells on anything that happens. And, that's something that really helped me develop as a player.
Well, LA certainly was a key piece all year, but down the stretch, he really took charge, and none was more crucial than the overtime win on the road at Denver. Now we wrap up the regular season on the Proceed Road to Seattle as the Bison fight for a top seed at the Summit League tournament. The Bison would end the regular season 20-9, 12-4 in Summit League play, and would earn a 2 seed in the conference tournament. Those games there, I think, really show where NDSU came from as they started the conference tournament to right down the stretch. Of course, the loss right there at the end of the year was a bit of a hiccup, but that really propelled them, I think, for the success that they had in the Summit League.
It did, and they got important wins at home against IUPUI, and the game against IPFW is so critical because had they lost that last game at home, all of a sudden you go to Oral Roberts, the pressure's on and you lose there. You could drop from a 2 seed to a 4 seed. And that's how things could have really spiraled for NDSU. It was important for them to get a Saturday game and get that Sunday off. When you only play 7 players, you need that extra day of rest to make sure those guys can bounce back and play 2 games in 2 days. But with LA, he's the man. He's really the man. I was at his first game at the University of San Francisco. There was about 20 people there, and LA almost had a triple-double. And this kid burst on the scene. I remember Rex Walters was the head coach at the University of San Francisco. And every time he scored and did something, he had like 13 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. He looked back at his assistants and just threw his hands up like, "Who is this kid?"
Gosh, look at that
Because no one had any film of him. No one knew who he was. He's this freshman that came out of nowhere. And the biggest thing that stands out to me is the winningest player in program history. And when you will your teams to win, that to me says more than any other stat.
I think that was well said. I mean, he's just done so many things, and I think the fans have really enjoyed watching him this year, and he's gotten a lot of credit. He's deserved that credit. He's been in a great leadership role. And great leaders make the players around them better, and that's exactly what he's done. He's made the players around him better.
Well, and something that they really talked about, you mentioned that big win, that senior day win. Dave Richmond said he talked to LA a lot about controlling that emotion and using it, but controlling it. And you could see them kind of struggle with that maybe a little bit early on in that game, and then they kind of found their rhythm. And I think that's going to be an important thing moving forward, and that experience, I think, has certainly helped them along the way.
Well, and the crowd was dynamic, too. I mean, you're just not going to lose in that situation. I've been in those games once in a while, but I'm telling you, it was just an unbelievable atmosphere. I mean, so it was perfect. And, again, he rises to every challenge.
And I think on top of that, too, games are one thing, practices are another. And the coaches all tell me that he practiced so much harder this year than he has in previous years. Said there are times he would coast by and do some things. This year he practiced a lot harder, and I think that maybe raised the level of his teammates to try to set the example. And I think he took that upon himself to take that leadership role, where in the past he probably didn't have to do that.
Well, and one other point that I think it's really, really key is they had a taste of being in the big tournament last year. And I tell you, once you've had a taste of something like that, you want to, no other team in the conference has
True.
that. And I want to tell you, you want it again.
Oh, I know. I've had a chocolate cupcake. I'm wanting more. How about it? Well, when we come back, we'll look back on the run made by the Bison in the Summit League tournament, plus a great conversation with those former Bison coaches, Tim Miles and Saul Phillips. You don't want to miss this.
And welcome back to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament Preview Show. The Proceed Road to Seattle continues with the Bison as the second seed in the Summit League Tournament in Sioux Falls. They make it past Denver in the first round, and in the second round, it would be a rematch of the final regular season game. This time, the Bison get the best of Oral Roberts with a 60-56 win. And guys, you were there. What was it about that game?
For the first time in the regular season or postseason, NDSU actually wanted to push the ball and get tempo, wanted to get some transition. And when you look at Carlin Dupree, 11 of those 13 first half points came in the first half because his game is getting out in the open floor and making plays. And I think that caught Oral Roberts off guard and was a big reason they had an 8-point lead. And then we're able to kind of settle in and make it a half-court game and grind it out at the end, making just enough plays down the stretch.
Well, and I think that's the key, is making them plays down the stretch, and they made them at key times, and they had control when they needed to. All you'd have to, if you can get in late in the game and get a couple spurts, the game is yours. And that's exactly what, and they're good at that. They really can make that spurt when they need it.
Well, then it boils down to the top two seeds, NDSU, SDSU, kind of a fitting matchup. The co-regular season champions, and it certainly set up a battle royale.
It did. I mean, it was going to be a great basketball game. I think the one we were looking forward to. I think maybe there was some concern about South Dakota State having so many home fans, being so close to home. How is North Dakota State going to slow down this machine? Because the Jackrabbits in their previous two games in the tournament were so good and so smooth on both the offensive and defensive ends, and they were getting a lot of balance. A lot of different guys were hurting their opponents. But I think NDSU did just enough in that game to slow them down and get them out of rhythm. And then I think it was just one of those things, just a battle of wills. And the game was officiated differently.
Yes.
It was officiated differently. And the coaches saw that early, that inside you weren't going to get the little bumps. You had to really go in there hard. And I think that played a critical factor as well.
I totally agree with that. And I thought, again, the control of the game, the way we ran that weave, or whatever Dave wants to call it, but going from side to side, I mean, it just took South Dakota State completely out of their rhythm. And they had to rush down the floor. They'd rush shots at times, and they were out of control so many times. And they'd had their way with everybody. I mean, they were scoring a lot of points. The last part of the season, not only the tournament, they were scoring a lot of points. Now the Bison were controlling them. And the defensive end of the floor was terrific. I mean, it was just outstanding.
Well, I think you mentioned, you know, SDSU kind of having their way with people. Also with those big guys, they were able to kind of bully people. I think people shied away. They got elbowed a little bit. Well, two people who aren't going to shy away, Dexter Werner and Corey Brown. I mean, to see them throw it in, I know you don't want to encourage technical fouls in a game, but to see Dexter really hold his own down there and not get pushed off his block, I think was really crucial down there as well.
They made it tough on Cody Larson down there, and he had some free throws, but they did not give up an inch to Cody Larson down low.
No, and Dexter's not going to give up. You watch even this coming weekend, he's not going to give up to anybody. I mean, that's his will, and that's his strength, and he's just not afraid. He's going to take you on. He's going to make it tough, and then you got a different player in Keating, and so you got a nice combination there that you got to look for two different things, and that makes a lot of difference from a coaching perspective.
Well, we certainly want to get your ideas on that. That brings up the Nodak Mutual Insurance keys to the game. Let's start with Brian, though. What do you think is key in this moment?
Tempo, 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 no second chances. When I say that, Gonzaga is one of those teams that's scoring 80 points a game. If you let them get out and play footloose and fancy free and get some easy looks to the basket, any one of the five on the floor, they can really, really hurt you. And I think for them, NDSU, you want to clunk it up. You want the game in the 50s, and you want to give yourself a chance in the last 5 minutes.
I agree. There's 2 points that I totally agree with. One is I guarantee you, you've got to control the tempo against this team. You've got to keep the ball in your hands. You got to take good shots along with that, and rebounding is going to be critical. You can't give them the second shots. I think that's going to be critical.
And you mentioned a pretty good thing earlier.
Yes, I really feel it's really important for the Bison not to worry about 40 minutes of basketball. I think they ought to try to win each TV timeout or be close in each TV timeout. Because the coaches, as you come over to the huddle, say, hey, we won that 4 minutes. Let's just take it 4 minutes at a time. And I've seen teams do that, and all of a sudden you're in the game. And you give the Bison a chance late in the game. They've been in this situation many times, but you've got to give them that chance. But win the TV timeouts.
Well, I'm no expert on Bison basketball, but my key to the game is play Bison basketball. They've gotten this far by playing, not understanding, I guess is probably the best way, being naive to the situation and being naive to the stage. And I think that if they can keep that out of their minds, keep that they are playing in the NCAA tournament, they are playing a giant in Gonzaga. If they can keep that out of their minds and just play Bison basketball, I think they will have a little bit of success, a lot of success against Gonzaga.
I know another thing I talked to you about was really neutralizing that size that Gonzaga has to be able to work the ball outside. Something the Bison have is Chris Kading, who can shoot a ball. They've got these guys who can get outside and kind of, you know, force Gonzaga to come out on them a little bit.
Well, you know, it'd be nice to see that 7-footer outside. You know, I mean, then you got a little bit more equal rebounding because Jacobson can do it inside, Dupree, Brown. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can happen, but you got to get them out of their comfort zone. But you know, it's a great opportunity. And I look at the Bison; they have nothing to lose. They go down there, they can be loose. They can go down there, they have nothing to lose, and they've been there before. They were there last year. That's the danger, too, because I can tell you, a few saying, you know what happened to Oklahoma last year? I want to tell you.
Well, Gonzaga is no foreigner to the Cinderella story, that's for sure. Up next, we're going to get to that exclusive interview with former Bison coaches Tim Miles and Saul Phillips. These two are one of a kind. Stick with us. Welcome back to our Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament Preview Show. They say each team takes on a personality of its own, but this Bison basketball program has a unique personality. Thanks in large part to two former coaches I had the opportunity to speak with earlier this week. Exciting here to welcome to the set Tim Miles and Saul Phillips, two former NDSU Bison basketball coaches, now at Nebraska and Ohio, respectively. Thank you guys so much for being here and joining us and subjecting yourselves to each other's wrath a little bit. Want to go ahead and get started initially talking Dave Richman, somebody that really got his big start under you guys, working with you guys. Tim, he worked as a graduate assistant and then was promoted to an assistant coach with you. What did you see early on about Dave Richman?
Well, Dave grew up around it. There's no doubt about it. You know, with his dad, John, who was a football coach at North Dakota State College of Science for a long time, very successful. So Dave's been a a guy that's been around it the whole time. Now, however, Dave's a lot smarter than John because he went from football to basketball. So you could tell Dave was going to be successful at a young age when he decided to be a college player at Science and then come to NDSU and be a student coach. And David is very well organized. He's a bulldog on the recruiting trail. He's a very smart, keen evaluator, and he knows how to identify with a lot of different people. And Dave is one of those guys that just was a pleasure to coach with. And there's no question that although Saul left him in a tough spot, that he overcame obstacles and was able to take the team to the championship in the NCAA tournament.
I think we're burying the lead here. It's clear every time somebody moves on from North Dakota State, they just replace them with someone more talented and better. And that started with Miles, and then I took over, and now Dave's taken it to another level. So, shoot, it was an easy decision. Dave was ready, and obviously he was ready when he took over as a head coach. So, again, they keep shedding dead weight. It keeps getting better and better.
You were somebody, Saul, that wholeheartedly supported Dave Richmond as taking over when you left. You had even said if they aren't smart enough to hire him, you're taking him with you. What did he possess that showed you he was ready? Because this is his first head coaching job.
Well, I supported him because he had incriminating pictures on me, and we decided that it was easier just to go with that. No, he had the team in terms of their respect. They wanted him, and I knew he was ready. He learned under some pretty good coaches along the way, going back to Ray Jack to you just keep McDermott, obviously begrudgingly Miles, all of that. He was ready. It was his time.
Tim, when you looked at this kid...
by the way, whoa. Saul, I have incriminating video on you. So when do I get hired at Ohio, man? When's the time that I get a little thing out of this deal, huh? I'm sorry.
Here's what I want to know. You're going to put together a panel of experts to talk about the NCAA tournament. You and I combined for 23 wins this year. I mean, combined. That's two different teams. You could have done a little better than you did. That's all I'm saying.
I just call it a nap. We just decided to take a little rest this season, and we're just taking a little reprieve from all the stress and rigors of March Madness.
Well, we were tanking. We thought that was how you do it in college basketball, and we realized there wasn't a lottery. So that didn't. By the time we figured it out, it was too late.
You guys, it would, behoove me not to talk to you guys about your guys' seasons this year.
Well, this year I was 1-0 against Saul Phillips. That's all I know. Really, the only thing that matters to me is that in Hawaii, Apollo Creed knocked out Rocky Balboa, and that once I got past that moment, and even the score with Saul, nothing else really mattered. I hate to say that publicly, but really it was that was the highlight of the year for me, and I just couldn't get up for Big Ten play. I just couldn't. It was just hard. It's like fighting the JV game, compared to the Saul Phillips, Tim Miles throwdown in front of 141 people in whatever arena that was in Hawaii. But honestly, that was the highlight of my year.
Well, I want to rebut Miles before we go any further here.
Yes, no, please.
In that I responded to the loss by Nebraska by kind of going all Howard Hughes on everybody. I sequestered myself in a room with the milk jugs and just kind of hung out. Still not really over it. There are moments in your life that force you to step back and really try to redefine who you are, and losing to a Tim Miles-led club is one of those moments, and still not quite right about it. But moving forward...
No. Hold on one second, Saul. I want to know how Tim Miles didn't even get you any more engaged in Twitter after that. I thought we were going to see Saul Phillips embrace Twitter, respond. You have like 2 tweets, and one of the, obviously they're responses to Tim, but...
it's an art form, Saul. Your ability to be on Twitter is like an art form. It's an expression. It's the way you handle yourself, and the fact that you don't have that in you is a little disconcerting for all of us that are around you. What are you hiding, Saul?
I have a problem with my filter, and I have a clause in my contract that is a morality cause, and I'm trying to abide by that. That's why I'm not on Twitter.
Well, you know, it's good to see that you still have plenty you can learn from Tim Miles. We're gonna take a break here for a little bit. We'll come back. I'll let Saul talk a little bit about Ohio and what he has going on there. Stick with us. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to our Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament Preview Show. I'm joined right now by Tim Miles and Saul Phillips, two former Bison basketball coaches, moving on, chasing further dreams. Saul Phillips, before we went to break, Tim and I cut you off, but I did want to let you talk a little bit about Ohio.
Good move, by the way. Good move on that.
And how things are going out there as you start to try and create your next great program.
Well, it's done the same way everywhere. You get good players in, you teach them how to play, and eventually you win. I'm a much better coach with good players, and certainly you build it the same way you tried to build it at North Dakota State.
Saul, you took over and got the 2 NCAA appearances under your belt. Granted, one of those were probably Tim's guys, but and now you see Dave Richmond getting the 3rd in 7 years. 3 NCAA appearances by NDSU in 7 years. That's really impressive. Was there a blueprint?
Well, basically, we just had to make sure we stayed ahead of UND. Sorry about that.
We could all agree on that one.
Can't resist a good Fighting Sioux joke. But no, the recipe is really simple. Saul, first of all, I think that, you're as strong as the people that you work with. Like Saul talked about players, I'll talk about staff. I had a chance to hire Saul, who played for Bo Ryan and coached with Bo Ryan, and Saul's a great coach in his own right. I had Todd Coring with me. I had Dave Richmond. Craig Smith was with me, who's now the head coach at the University of South Dakota.
Saul, when you are looking at this, Dave Richmond, one of 47 new Division I men's basketball coaches this year. You're one of them as well, took over at a new school. Just 2 of those 47 made it to the NCAA tournament. How hard is it truly? Can you put that in perspective to make this tournament?
Ask Northwestern how hard it is to make the NCAA tournament. It's difficult. Ask University of North Dakota how easy the transition's been. It's hard, but at the same time, and I think Tim hit on it, we were set up for success by what we were surrounded by, sans the lavish BSA that we played in, but literally every other component with Gene, with presidents that we had in there.
You mentioned the BSA. May it rest in peace. NDSU, yes. Fargo has moved on. The construction is well underway. Looks gorgeous. But I can't let this interview go on without talking to Tim about facilities. Tim, you were in the spotlight this year, locking those doors up. Coach Carter, sending the chains on the door.
Well, let's just rewind here a little bit. I remember talking to a kid from Minnetonka one time in my office at the Bison Sports Arena, and there was 3 people upstairs doing power cleans, and they were banging the weights on my ceiling, basically. And so plaster comes down, right? And literally the dad had like dust and plaster in his hair, right? And I said, just so you know, that's the girls' cross-country team. And, and it sounded like it was a herd of bison. But, and now to be in a state-of-the-art, probably top 5 or 10 place in the country when it comes to basketball facilities, it's kind of easy to get lost in the kitchen area, the lounge area, your locker room, your iPad, your this, that, or the other thing. And I just wanted our guys to realize what they had. So they spent 3 weeks getting dressed in the bleachers. And what was funny was at the end, they were spending more time just sitting there talking. And I said, and Saul will be able to remember this from the times he was the Human Victory Cigar. I think he played in like 8 games at Platteville. I think he's the only undefeated college player ever to go through Platteville. He played in 8 games in 4 years. And they were all, these landmark wins, of course. But Saul will tell you, and I'll tell you as a former small college guy, that, these guys are out talking. They were like a deck of cards away from being a real team.
I think Tom Miles got it exactly right there. How about the time Miles applied for a job at Mary, and they sent him a letter of decline saying, no thanks, Tom Miles. So that tells you about his college career. That's all I'm saying.
But wait, the same day I got my student loan bill that was correct, Tim Miles. So I just knew my role, man. I knew my role.
You made quite an indelible impression on the University of Mary community. That's all I know.
Oh, we certainly know that the state of North Dakota loves you both.
Hey, I have one question for Saul. Is it true that there was a time that you were sitting at the end of the bench and the whole crowd started chanting, "We want Saul, we want Saul," and Bo Ryan meanders down to the end of the bench, squats down in front of you, Saul, and says, "Saul, go over there and find out what they want"?
That did happen. I can verify that, and it was actually it was the only time Bo ever talked to me during my career. So that was a highlight. That was a highlight for me.
Well, guys, we've only got about a minute left here. I want to get your guys' picks. I want to hear what you guys think quickly about NDSU taking on Gonzaga. Of course, why we're here today, NDSU preparing for that matchup. Tim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Bison in a rout. If Dave doesn't win this thing by double figures, then he's embarrassed the whole thing. So
I'm going to go.
Go ahead, Saul.
I'm going to go a step further. I just can't let this go. We just waltzed in the tournament and won a game last year, and if Dave doesn't do that, I would say, it's time to question a lot of things about the program and about Dave in particular. It's just not that hard. Here's what I want to know is, Miles and I are going to talk to him. I'm going to talk to him about winning an NCAA tournament game, and then I was going to have Miles talk to him about coaching a full NCAA tournament game, but we reviewed the tape, and Miles didn't last the whole game last year, so I'm going to have to talk to him about that, too.
Ooh, fighting words.
Here's the deal. I had a lot of family in the crowd. I hadn't seen them for a long time. Hey, I lasted longer than that ref. At least that ref is out of business nowadays, and I'm still coaching.
Well, I think it's karma is what it is. You didn't deserve to be thrown out, so the basketball guys just kind of took care of it for you.
Well,
you know what? Saul,
go ahead,
Saul
Tim.
did a phenomenal job last year. If Saul did a phenomenal job last year, Dave has got a really difficult matchup. Not that Saul didn't, but Gonzaga is a Final Four type team, and I'm sure he'll manage the game well. And our whole goal is that we all find each other in the NCAA tournament in the same region some year here in the short term, where Ohio, NDSU, and Nebraska are all hanging around the same region. That would be good for basketball, I think.
Now, you can see that entire interview on valleynewslive.com. We heard their picks there, maybe not quite as serious, but want to get your guys' opinions, not on Tim and Saul, that's for sure, but on this basketball game we're looking at.
I'm still dumbfounded by watching that. I'm going to go with the favorite Gonzaga. I say 75-60. I just think their length, their depth at so many different positions takes its toll on NDSU, and eventually they end up pulling away in the second half.
Well, you know who I'm going to pick. I mean, I'm a Bison through and through, and I love Dave Richmond, and I love these kids. I think that they've done a great job. If they can get a close game, and let's go back to what I said, if they can win in the 4-minute timeouts, that's really hard to do. But it's a better goal than just trying to look at a whole picture of that. I think they'll do well, but I agree with him. The Bison have to keep the tempo down. You can't play a team like this. It's got so much strength, and they've been in a lot of big games this year. So, but I'll pick the Bison by 1.
Brian, I agree with everything that you had to say, but I just got here, so shamelessly, I will take the Bison in an attempt to gain fans around here.
Looking for people to take sympathy on you. All right, I'll take it. I feel like I should know better than to ever bet against NDSU. If working here for almost 5 years does not mean anything, but I do think Gonzaga, I think they are a team with a lot of strengths, a lot of power, and I think NDSU is going to be out there and they're going to play a tough game, but it'll be a tough one. It'll be Gonzaga in the end. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this Farmers Union Insurance Bison Basketball Tournament Preview Show, for Alex, Irv, and Brian for joining me as well. This game, Gonzaga, at 8:50 p.m. on TNT. Don't forget, Valley News Live team will be in Seattle with the Bison during their tournament run.